Welcome in to the Scoop, the premier Inside Carolina UNC football recruiting podcast, presented to you by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com, your one-stop shop for all your UNC apparel. Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. This is the Scoop. All right, welcome into the Scoop. I'm your host, Ross Martin, joined by Don Callahan. Like I said at the top, presented to you by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. We have a big show today. A really big show with a great interview right in the middle. Don, how you feeling? What's going on?
I am feeling great. Just
All
got back from Atlanta. We'll get into that a little bit. Spent about 4 days away from home.
Wow.
Going to your neck. Well, I guess you're home away from home. Spent a couple nights in Asheville.
Okay.
Break up my trip and then ended up in Atlanta. So yeah. So what's up with Ross?
Yeah, big day yesterday with after the basketball game, and then spring football. Those 1 days of open practices are tons of work. We had open practice for 2 hours, and then we had a Mac Brown press conference a couple hours later, and that kept us going with tons of content. We're still rolling out a bunch of stuff too. So
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff from Jim, our photographer, and Kirsten, our videographer. So a lot of videos coming out and things like that, and then tons of content from the press conference as well. So it's kind of a little crossover season here with basketball kicking into full gear. Got Duke game on Saturday, and then spring practice. So we'll have availabilities, the next every week from here on out until the spring game.
Do they have more practices open?
I think this is it until the spring game. But so it was good to get out there. We had pretty good access and could see everything, but yeah, it was crazy, and we'll get into it. But, there was no offensive line coach. They just had Kevin Donnelly coaching the offensive line. So let's go through the show here. We have a big show planned. We've been planning the show for a while. We're going to start with the loss of Stacy Searles to Georgia, UNC's offensive line coach, get into that, the impact of that, and the new hire, and briefly discuss the new hire, a guy I don't think we both don't know much about. We're going to get to Don's trip to Atlanta for the Under Armour camp. Is that right?
Yes.
And then the junior day this weekend, UNC's hosting a big junior day. I think Mac Brown even mentioned it on his press conference yesterday. So we'll talk about the junior day coming up. Then we have a interview with Mary Rice, the mother of UNC early enrollee freshman Zach Rice. And we recorded that a couple days ago, late last week. And so that is in the it's been the folder, and it was a really good discussion with Mary Rice and a good interview with her, all about the recruitment process, her son, UNC, how they recruited him, and then kind of the first couple months at UNC for Zach. And then we'll get into some spring practice thoughts. Don had some questions for me. We'll go back and forth on some topics of interest, position moves, certain players, coaching moves, all that good stuff. Your thoughts, Don?
I'm excited. I think we need to make sure that we emphasize, and I think we brought this up in the interview with Mary Rice, is that the interview is done well before Stacy Searles left.
Yeah.
So obviously, if that would have happened before the interview, we would have talked to her about that. But yeah, so at the point of that interview, we had no idea that Stacy Searles was going to be leaving North Carolina.
Yeah, and she mentions him a little bit, and we may mention him once or twice, but he didn't take a prominent role in the interview, but of course he's mentioned, so take that note. Great note there, Don. Okay, let's get into it. You ready?
I am as ready as I'm going to be.
Okay. And guys, the Mary Rice interview is great, so make sure you stay on for that. And then I think most football fans, UNC football fans, will enjoy the spring practice thoughts. I'll give some of my kind of more unfiltered thoughts on what I saw and everything. And there's a lot of movement, a lot of things going on with some position changes that Don can also talk about, given some of these players were recruited to play one spot and are kind of moving or transitioning to another position. So it's kind of interesting to dive into that. Okay, Don, you mentioned it. Stacy Searles takes the same position at Georgia, moves to the national championship Georgia Bulldogs. And news broke yesterday that UNC is going to hire Jack Bicknell Jr. from Louisville. Spent 1 year at Louisville after 1 year at Auburn, after 3 seasons at Ole Miss. And he has not been announced officially, but that's the news coming out of the news world. Don, your thoughts on losing Stacey Searles, his run 3 years as UNC's offensive line coach?
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about it from the recruiting standpoint, and I think it'd be good for you to kind of give the actual team standpoint. But from a recruiting standpoint, I mean, he was a solid recruiter. I wouldn't say he was outstanding. I wouldn't say he was bad, but he was a guy, I guess, that reliable recruiter, definitely was active recruiting his guys, always try to establish a relationship with the offensive lineman in particular. But he wasn't a guy who was he wasn't an ace recruiter that was going to steal a recruit from someone sort of thing, but he wasn't someone who would lose recruits for you, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I think so there's not like so I'll be interested to see I don't know a whole lot about his replacement at all. I've done some digging, and from a recruiting standpoint, at least, I haven't been able to uncover too much. I've reached out to some other writers. I'm trying to get their takes. And there hasn't been a whole lot of, just substance, I guess, not good or bad. But one of the things I'm really interested in is just the type of offensive lineman. I mean, obviously, there's only so many different ways you can go with recruiting offensive linemen. But one of the things Cheryl's really focused on was size. And you see that with Travion Green, with Malik McGowan. Just, those were massive human beings. I think, Ross, you saw Green for the first time in spring practice on Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's a massive human being. And these are guys who they had other Power 5 offers, but North Carolina went in on them very, very hard and recruited them very hard because Cheryl's loved that size. So, and he also kind of stayed away from guards. The only guard, maybe a couple. The one, Jarrett Wilson, who was committed for a little bit and then flipped back to Georgia, and then ironically where Cheryl's is going. And then, Sam Pendleton, he recruited. So, but there wasn't a whole lot of guards that he really focused on tackles and just large human beings. So I'm curious to see what we get from a recruiting standpoint and how it changes because UNC's obviously offered a bunch of offensive linemen in this class already. And so how that changes, who they continue to recruit and all that.
Yeah, some really great points there about the type of player positions recruits. Not many guards, tackles, and centers. Going through some of his recruits, he landed obviously Corey Gaynor, the transfer from Miami. He recruited to Miami, and that was a major reason why Gaynor committed as a transfer to UNC. Gaynor was in uniform yesterday, splitting reps at center. I imagine Gaynor is going to stay at UNC, but that's just kind of an interesting wrinkle there. Going through the list here, he recruited Trey Zimmerman to UNC, who I think is already stopped his playing career.
He took a medical DQ.
Yeah. Diego Pounds, who we saw yesterday. So Diego Pounds was a decent.
Another big human being.
Yeah, who versatile, can play guard, can play tackle. And then Eli Sutton, he was a lead recruiter on that. He was not the lead recruiter on Zach Rice, but played a big role, and that would be probably his most significant.
And that actually, his recruiting kind of came into question a lot during Zach's recruitment. For those who followed it, Zach mentioned a couple times, and we didn't get into it really with Zach's mom in the interview, but Zach made some comments about how he was trying to connect with Stacey Searles, and I think that wasn't necessarily. I don't want to say it wasn't a knock on Searles' inability to connect with Zach. I just think that Cheryl's definitely, there's certain guys he connected a lot better with. Zach and him had to, it's just natural, as far, two human beings, not everybody's going to mix and match. And so that was one of the examples where Zach had and Cheryl's had to work a little bit harder to kind of establish a relationship. So let
me add this. I think it was his, he had tons of experience coaching at a lot of big time schools with a lot of big time, head coaches. He was under Saban, I think. Let me pull up his page here. So there was this allure of being able to coach big time players and get them to the NFL. He had tons of experience getting players to the NFL. He coached at LSU, Georgia, Texas, Virginia Tech, Miami, UNC, and now Georgia again. So that was kind of attractive, I thought, the fact that all these big coaches really liked him as a as a recruiter and a developer of talent. He recruited and coached Andrew Whitworth, who was
Playing the Super Bowl.
played the Super Bowl, has been a big time tackle for the Rams for a long time. So that was one thing of note. But at UNC, I don't know, a little bit. I think is this
Well, so
career was a
he
little bit
took a
different.
lot of heat this past season, flipping it to the football side. So from I guess the team perspective, I mean,
Yeah.
I
think,
do you feel like this is a loss or potential gain?
I think a lot of people on the message boards would think this would be a good thing that he left. And who knows? I'm not an offensive lineman. I don't know what goes on in practice. I don't know the ins and outs of whether it was talent, whether it was coaching, whether it was a mix of the two, and probably was a mix of the two. UNC wasn't the most talented on the offensive line, but they gave up lots and lots of sacks over the 3 years for Sam Howell. And, the offensive line could be credited for giving up some of those sacks. Some of the sacks couldn't fall on Sam Howell or the offense. He was also part of the offensive line that was really good at really good at run blocking for Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. Now, maybe a lot of that was Michael Carter and Javonte Williams kind of outrunning the blocks and being really, really good runners. So there's always two sides to the story. But I would say the offensive line wasn't as great this year as it was in the past. And some of that blame fell on him. He was a popular name to get fired on people on the message boards, right? You saw as much as I did.
Yeah.
So there wasn't some uproar about him leaving, I don't think. And so I guess hopefully for UNC fans, I hope that Jack Bicknell is a better hire. Going through his resume, he coached some small schools. He was at Boston College as a GA, New Hampshire, Louisiana Tech, and then pretty quickly and as a young man became a head coach at Louisiana Tech for 8 years, which is kind of a crazy wrinkle. Then he got fired there, I imagine. Yeah, he went 3-10, got fired. He was at Boston College. Then he spent a good 10 years, 10 years in the NFL with the Giants, the Chiefs, the Steelers, and the Dolphins. He was at Ole Miss, like I mentioned, not under Phil Longo, but alongside Phil Longo as the offensive line coach for Phil Longo's offensive coordinator position. And then at Auburn, Louisville, and now North Carolina. Don, what does that kind of resume tell you as a recruiter? Or what does that benefit tell you?
I think that the NFL background is big. He'll be able to lean on that in recruiting and kind of explain, hey, I know what NFL teams are looking for. I've spent this amount of time coaching in the NFL. I've been in those meetings where we're making decisions on who to draft. So I know what to kind of emphasize to get you ready for the NFL. I think that's big. I think also the fact that he's recruited in the SEC, they're not Alabama and Auburn, but Ole Miss, I'm sorry, one is Auburn actually. They're not, but Ole Miss and Auburn definitely recruit at a high level, and they're competing in the trenches in some very competitive areas for recruits. The most interesting thing though is, he was on that team he played at Boston College, and he was on the team with Doug Flutie for the Hail Mary pass.
Very cool. Yeah, I didn't pick that up. That is interesting. And I also think NFL experience, I don't know if you mentioned this. I mean, you can turn to that. You can say, hey, look, I know what it takes to get to the NFL.
Yeah.
I've coached offensive line. I know exactly what the offensive line coaches are looking for at the NFL. I can help you get there, and that can help with recruiting. Let's see. I had a text from someone that gave us a little insight here. Bicknell was targeted because he's intense, he's a technician, and he fits well with Longo. So
that is the other thing, is that when he was at Ole Miss, he coached with Longo. So I'm sure that kind of helped, and I'm sure that connection was probably what brought him to North Carolina, to be honest.
Yeah, and those connections are important. It's good to have chemistry in your coaching staff. We talked about how the lack of chemistry on the defensive staff at times could have affected it, and that's kind of a big reason why Bateman. There was some issues with the situation with Bateman and Mac Brown and the assistant coaches. Why are you smiling? All right, trying to talk my way out of all this and put it all.
Well, let's go to Atlanta.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our Stacy. How do you say his name? Stacy
Sherrills.
Cheryl's?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard it pronounced a lot of different ways. I always said Cheryl's.
I said Cyril's.
Cyril's?
That's what I would say. I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't matter anymore now.
That's
I
right.
don't think we'll need to pronounce that name again.
That's right. All right. I ran into Stacy Cyril's at a Harris Teeter parking lot once.
Oh, really?
And he was wearing camo Crocs.
Oh boy.
And he had like 3 cases of light beer. And it was like after the spring game. And when a man's wearing camo Crocs and carrying 3 cases of light beer, that kind of man gets along with Ross Martin.
I gotcha.
So, we talked a little bit in the parking lot. That's my Stacy Cyril story.
Yeah, he's definitely. I mean, he's a tall dude, so it's hard to
big
miss
dude.
him.
He played in the NFL.
Yeah. But I mean, he's tall, But yeah. So on to Atlanta, as you mentioned earlier, or I mentioned it too.
I'll set you up here. All right. So you went to Atlanta for the Under Armour game, Under Armour recruiting event. Tell us what that event is and tell us what you got from it in terms of UNC recruits.
So, every spring there are these showcase camps, I like to call them, where it's just they attract the best players in those areas, and usually there's some sort of carrot they kind of dangle. In this, they have the Under Armour All-American game. Although a lot of the spots have been taken, they kind of offer, they will present additional spots to participants in this camp. And then there's also, they do the Future 50 for the underclassmen. But a lot of this stuff, I mean, they're even giving out, roster spots for games like 2 years in advance and all that. But anyway, so tons of talent. And one of the things too is that there's less and less of these camps being held. In the past, they would have an Under Armour camp in Atlanta and then one in Charlotte. This year, they'll only have one in Charlotte. So in addition to attracting all of those Georgia kids, there were kids from North Carolina, South Carolina, and just all the other surrounding areas. So there was a ton of talent. Heading into it with my notes based off of the roster we were initially providing, some of the guys no-showed because of whatever reason. The weather wasn't the greatest. I think I had over 24 offered 2023 guys. And then obviously there was a bunch of underclassmen that UNC had offered that were also there. So there was a ton of talent. I guess, the 2 main ones, Caleb Downs, the top safety in the nation, 5-star guy, brother of Josh Downs, been in North Carolina a bunch, and Noah Rogers, 4-star wide receiver. I think 24/7 Sports has him the top rated prospect in North Carolina. UNC's involved with both of those guys, but also, and I've seen both of those guys, I guess, perform in different settings a bunch previously. But Jeremiah Cobb, who is the only running back North Carolina has offered in this class, we actually ran an update with him on Wednesday. I was really interested in seeing him. Didn't get to see him enough because of just the situation. But just tons of talent. I don't know how detailed you want me to go about the camp. I mean, I can, as far as the layout or that, what that may be. I mean, have you ever covered any of these before when you did the recruiting stuff?
I've covered Nike camps.
Okay.
What are those called?
It's pretty similar. The opening,
yeah. Those still exist, right?
Yeah. So they scale back a ton. And now I think they only do Elite 11 camps, and then they invite other positions there too. But I mean, I don't know if the funding is kind of drying up for these things or what, but there's not as many as there used to be.
Okay, so I went through your scoop, and that's where you detail a lot of your interviews and interactions with some of these top recruits that were at that camp, top UNC prospects. Give me like a major takeaway. Is there any newsworthy tidbit from the Under Armour camp that's worth sharing?
You talk about from a
UNC
recruiting standpoint or a evaluation standpoint?
A recruiting standpoint.
Okay.
I mean, you mentioned like what, 10 people on here?
Yeah.
Like Jamal Jarrett was there.
Jamal Jarrett was there.
Yeah.
He came away with the defensive line MVP, which is interesting because a lot of people are now starting to say, okay, maybe he's an offensive lineman. I'm starting to kind of fall into that camp also. He's so light on his feet, and you see him in like a non-football drill and you think, okay, this guy could definitely play defensive tackle.
Mm-hmm.
But in a drill sort of setting, you don't see the agility you need to see out of a defensive tackle. I mean, maybe, a nose tackle from way back when it was power football, but now you need to have a little bit more wiggle. I don't see that. So I see him more as a guard now, but I mean, he's, from a physical standpoint, good looking kid, good size, good mobility, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. What's your one big bit of news you got? I think that kind of led you there with the Jarrett thing.
Yeah. From just a recruiting standpoint, a lot of it was just, I guess the Caleb Downs coming back to North Carolina this weekend.
Okay.
I don't want to go into too many details to give away too much because everything is in my scoop, but I kind of lay out just where I believe the situation is at based off of conversations with a bunch of people at this camp, including those, some close to Downs and all that. And, this Saturday when he returns, and we'll get into this with the junior day information, when he returns to North Carolina, it's will give UNC a chance to better establish itself in this race it's a highly competitive race because the other schools that are involved are Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Notre Dame. So, I mean, it's like the best when it comes to recruiting that North Carolina is competing against. So, getting him to get back on campus and not just hang out with his brother, which obviously is key, but to get him in a recruiting setting where you can kind of lay out what's going on and try to, better position yourself within this very competitive race is key.
Yeah. And Rico Walker was there. What's going on with his recruitment?
So Rico celebrating a birthday on Sunday. So happy belated birthday, Rico, if you're listening to this, which you're probably not. But so he's going to come out with a top schools list. And he, even though, he attended North Carolina's junior day in January, he's coming back for the junior day this Saturday. Unless you're a commit, it's not common for a recruit to attend multiple junior days at the same school. So I think that's significant. And then also he's visited North Carolina probably more than any other school. And UNC is one of the first to offer him. But he said, I asked him, so what are the chances North Carolina makes a cut to your top schools cut? And he said, probably solid. And he was trying to be, secretive with me, but it was pretty obvious. I think it's obvious to anyone who's following this recruitment that North Carolina is a major player. That doesn't necessarily mean that North Carolina is going to eventually score his recruitment, but UNC is definitely a major player in his recruitment.
Okay, and he is getting recruited as an outside linebacker instead of which I guess is what he was.
Yeah,
before.
so that's the thing with him. I see him. A lot of other people see him as an edge rusher.
Yeah,
he worked out that camp at linebacker. And then also when he visited North Carolina in January, and we have an update with him immediately following that visit. So this is a report that we posted in January. He mentioned that Chizik, I think it was Chizik that told him that he was being recruited as a linebacker. I see him more as an edge guy. I would think that he would, that Chizik would want him for that jack position, but clearly that's not what they're telling him. But and he still has that desire to play tight end. I just think the kid is just so explosive coming off the edge, so long, exactly what you want from an edge rusher. But, it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what that jack position really is and what it really does.
I definitely have some questions for Ross Martin later on in this podcast about that jack position.
I don't know. We haven't had really that chance to ask about Gene Chizik about that yet. All right, and then finally, Noah Rogers. What's going on with that? Can you kind of give us a quick kind of overlay of what the Noah Rogers recruitment looks like? Seems like he's kind of has emerged as one of UNC's top wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away from the weekly scoop, but I mean, it's another very competitive recruitment. NC State has done a good job recruiting him, mostly because his best friend is Lex Thomas, who is quarterback commitment to NC State, and both of his brothers played NC State. So that has helped NC State. And then there's other national powers who are coming at him hard. And so Noah hasn't truly gotten a great grasp of his recruitment, but we gave a little bit, as much insight as we possibly can for a recruitment that's still kind of taking its course.
Okay, awesome. Wraps up the conversation on the Under Armour Atlanta experience, right?
It does. It does.
Okay. UNC is hosting a junior day this Saturday in Chapel Hill. It's going to be a big junior day, according to Mac Brown. There's a Tom Lemming photo shoot beforehand. What's going on with that junior day? Can you kind of tell us how it's going to break down? I know we've talked about junior days in the past, but let's get a refresher on what that looks like for UNC.
So I'm actually really curious. That was the only thing I didn't do, which I was hoping to do before the podcast, is watch Mac Brown's press conference. So how much did he end up talking about the junior day?
Not
just
much.
Kind of in passing.
It was just a mention, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. You mentioned the Tom Lemming thing. We kind of laid it out, not in this weekly scoop, the prior weekly scoop, that the weather in January actually ended up working into North Carolina's favor. And what I mean by that was NC State had an enormous junior day scheduled for January. One of the reasons why it was going to be so enormous was that Tom Lemming was holding his photo shoot just before this junior day. Now, let me just backtrack a little bit. Tom Lemming has been doing this. I mean, some out there want to call themselves the godfather of recruiting. Tom Lemming is legitimately the godfather of recruiting. And you can go back and look at his publications going back to the 70s to kind of prove it. I mean, this guy went to John Elway's high school and took photos of him and all that sort of stuff. So he goes way back. This guy definitely, he's been around and he goes nationwide. He's been doing this for I don't know how many years. So anyway, so what he does every year is he goes and sets up these photo shoots and invites all the top recruits within driving distance to these photo shoots, takes photos of them, gets their information, that sort of thing. Coincidentally, these photo shoots usually coincide with a school's recruiting event. So then that way they both can kind of piggyback off of each other. Pure coincidence. This year, or this, I guess, I don't know. I guess this year, it was supposed to be with that NC State Junior Day during one of those weekends when we had all that snow and ice and everybody freaked out, even though it wasn't and it didn't end up being so bad. They had NC State canceled their junior day, and so Tom Lemming canceled his. And I think NC State wanted to reschedule, I think, for later on in the spring, and Tom Lemming wanted something a little bit sooner. Somewhere along the line, don't rush me through this.
Get through this, man. Come on.
People love these details.
Get through this.
Somewhere along the line, North Carolina got involved, and so Lemming is going to hold it on March 5th, which is also my birthday, by the way. And North Carolina's going to have a junior day.
Okay, so what's the junior day going to look like for UNC?
So the big part, from my understanding, talking to sources, is that they're going to have like a watch party for the UNC Duke basketball game.
Okay, that starts at 6.
Yeah. So, but obviously they'll have a bunch of other things planned for the recruits, including, they'll do their own little jersey photo shoot. There'll be tours. There'll be, meetings with coaches. There'll be, meals. There'll be all these other stuff to keep everybody occupied and make sure everybody has a good time.
And UNC has a spring practice on Saturday as well, so I imagine that could figure into it.
What time's the spring practice?
I think it's a little bit later in the late morning. Okay. I can actually pull it up here, but I don't think it's really early like the ones. Let's see. Oh no, it says they have off, but I feel like he mentioned they have practice, but maybe I'm wrong with that. Sorry, I think I may be wrong. It says off.
Yeah, I don't know. It wouldn't make sense, I think, from a timing standpoint.
Yeah.
But I would imagine they're going to have, recruits pretty regularly at some of these practices. Yeah.
Okay. All right. The junior day, big recruiting opportunity for UNC. We mentioned a lot of the names that are going to be there, and definitely check out Don's scoop. And you'll have maybe an updated list at some point.
Yeah. We'll have an updated list
on Inside Carolina. So make sure you subscribe. Most of Don's content, say 95% Don's content is behind the paywall. So make sure you subscribe to Inside Carolina for that. And with that, of course, you get a 10% off Johnny t-shirt and johnnyt-shirt.com. Get all your UNC apparel, sweatshirts, t-shirts, all your good stuff, johnnyt-shirt.com. Okay, that concludes this portion of the podcast. We're now going to go into the Mary Rice interview. Again, this was recorded, I think, last Thursday, Don. So almost a week ago.
Yeah.
And we mentioned the Stacey Searle stuff. Obviously, he's not part of the staff anymore, but a really good interview with Mary Rice. That's coming up next. So check that out. Following that, Don and I talk a little bit about the interview, and then we'll get into some spring practice talk. We'll get some ads in right here, and then you'll have the Mary Rice interview, the mother of UNC early enrollee freshman offensive lineman, Zach Rice. And now we want to bring on Mary Rice, the mother of UNC early enrollee freshman offensive lineman, offensive tackle, Zach Rice. Zach Rice enrolled at UNC in January, and he committed to UNC and signed with UNC last fall. He finished up as a number 13th ranked player in the 2022 class, number 1 offensive tackle, and number 1 player in Virginia, and was part of that, really nice, really great UNC class that signed this past year. So I'm going to pass over to Dawn, and we'll get right into this interview with Mary Rice.
Yeah, Mary, I really appreciate you coming on. So thank you for taking some time out of your day for us today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So before I get to like our actual questions, I got to ask you, you and I talked a bunch of times during Zach's recruitment. You were super busy because of Zach, because, you had, in basketball, they went pretty far. I think went pretty close to state championship. Then football, obviously they went to the state championship. You had all these different banquets, you had all-star games, you had all this stuff going on. So what's it been like for you now that your nest is a little bit more empty?
It's like culture shock a little bit, it's like the house is way quiet, but I mean, it's, I'm so excited for him, hearing how things are going with him each day, and just getting a feel of, how happy he is. He's really enjoying being there. And I mean, it's been his dream for ever since he could imagine to be there doing what he's doing right now. So I'm overwhelmed. I'm super excited for him. But yeah, it's very different, Don, very different ball game than what we've talked about before. Definitely.
So he had a very competitive recruitment as far as the schools are concerned. I mean, and I'm going to ask you that as far, we were down to North Carolina, Virginia, Notre Dame, Alabama, Ohio State. What was it like? Because I mean, obviously, once you got those 5 and you headed into last summer with those 5, took a bunch of visits in June, and then I know that Zach actually wanted to have a decision by the end of the summer, wasn't ready, so he took his recruitment into this season, took a couple more visits, made a decision. What was that whole situation like for you and Zach?
Wow, it was overwhelming. It was amazing. It was scary. It was, exciting. It was a month I'll never forget. It's sort of, with COVID, we weren't able to get out to the schools like, in normal times we would have. So that was really our first chance to really get to, many of these schools. Of course, as you know, we'd been to UNC before, and then, was able to go to UVA because of just how close they were. But the other schools that were in his top 5 that you named, we weren't able to visit them prior to that month. So really trying to dive in and learn everything you can, because this was a decision we didn't take lightly. We wanted to do our research. We wanted to make sure that we knew everything going in, and that we had pros and cons lists. We had questions. We had a little notebook we kept about each school, and we tried to be very detail oriented about making this decision, and it did not come lightly. So going to these schools, sort of, you think you'd have in mind really where you felt like you were leading, and then you take a visit and it would sort of change things a little bit. Or that would bring up another question from that visit about your decision. So it was a tough process, but I wouldn't change it for anything either. We learned a lot about us. We learned a lot about recruiting, about the process, about really what Zach really wants to be happy, because it's such a big decision to make. It's not just football. It's about academics. It's about your future. And it's not a 4-year decision, as they say, it's a 40-year. So it's very important. And we wanted to do our due diligence on it, but it was a great process. It was a busy month. It was an insane month, but it was an amazing month all at the same time.
During those visits and during the whole recruitment, really, what were some of the things that you were looking for as a mother? What are some of the priorities you wanted to get information on from the coaching staffs during the whole process and as it evolved to ultimately the decision?
Well, I felt like it sort of got down to Zach never had a top three or anything like that. I felt like, the top five that he had was, you really couldn't go wrong with any of those schools, whether it be academically or really football wise. You couldn't
Mhm.
go wrong. I think it really came down to um, where he felt like could be his home, where he felt comfortable, where he would truly be happy and fit in, and where he could get developed. So I didn't want him being at a place that could not help him reach his goals. Zach has very distinct goals for himself and where he wants to see himself. And so, as his mom, I wanted to help him be aligned in the right place to meet those goals. And we felt like, I mean, with a Hall of Fame coach in Mac Brown, the development that Stacey Searles has had in his history
Mhm.
with the offensive line and with him playing in the NFL himself, I think it all, really came down to the facts as Mac Brown declared it. It was the facts about the program and what they all had to offer. And so that really sealed it for us.
That kind of, because you and I have talked about this before, and you actually were a huge help. Did you ever get a chance to read that story that we did on just kind of UNC's dominance in Virginia, where you actually were quoted quite a bit? Did you get a chance to check that out?
I've read so many, I think so,
Okay.
but I try to
Well, that
read them
was,
all.
well,
Yes.
you were super helpful with that. And in that, you actually discussed the fact that you felt like the tide started to turn towards North Carolina during a meeting with Mac Brown. I think it was a late June visit that you and Zach had made for now. Was it just you felt like, okay, North Carolina is a place, like in your mind? Because I know you definitely didn't want to influence Zach at all. Or did you notice something different in Zach that or maybe he said something to you that kind of led you believe, okay, UNC, he's starting to kind of favor UNC right now?
I think during that meeting, that's when Mac Brown sort of laid out what I consider, he called and termed his facts statements. And it really just broke down their development history, their program history, what he's done as a Hall of Fame head coach, what Stacey Searles has done, what the program can bring to the table for Zach. And in looking at that, yes, it really started making it very clear. Can he be developed there? Where could this program take him? Where could these coaches take him? I know academically, without question, it's a great institution, but yeah, it definitely did. The tide started turning during the summer and started leaning in the direction of UNC.
So, so
And Zach has said that, he really didn't fully know till the end. I think, you continue to pray about it. You continue to think about it. You continue to weigh out your list. And so I think when it was made 100% clear is when he said, Mom, I'm ready to commit.
So what was it, I guess, maybe that he was searching for or wanted to know, or I guess I'm trying to get from, because I know that he wanted to decide by the end of the summer. And then so he obviously was starting to favor North Carolina. What was he kind of waiting for to get to the point where he's 100% to where he waited until I think it was November or whenever, or October, whenever it was when he actually announced? November, I think it was.
I think just like 100%, like I think he was about 90%.
Mm-hmm.
And so just that 100% certainty, that he prayed about and he found, and just really being able to envision himself there and accomplishing his goals. And I think that once he got to that point, he didn't even call me and say, I'm ready to commit. He just called and said, I'm ready. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. And then from there we set a date and we were ready to put it out there to the world.
So you went to a little bit with talking about Mac Brown, but how did the other coaches recruit him? How did Mac Brown recruit him? What was it, maybe other than the development and lay out the facts, from a personality standpoint, and maybe just kind of like their strategy? How did they go about kind of recruiting him? If you could give some insight into that.
I think just with a genuineness and an honesty.
Mm-hmm.
I think they really were transparent. They were very, very family oriented. They really laid out how they could see Zach fitting in the program. It was real. It wasn't used car salesman type. It was honest. I felt like what they were telling me, it was going to be backed up in what they did once he got there. And that meant a lot. Mac Brown is very genuine, very outgoing. He paints a clear picture for you. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He's honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt very comfortable with him and how he laid out the plan for Zach and how he communicated with what they could offer Zach. I just felt very comfortable with him as a person. And then, of course, Dre Bly was very, very instrumental in the process. He was Zach's main recruiting coach, and then Stacy Searles was, of course, his position coach as well. So they both were very honest, family oriented. What sort of what you see is what you get over time. I think that Dre Bly, he really put a lot of effort and time into recruiting Zach, getting to know Zach as a person, not just a football player, and that's part of what helps seal the deal, to make a mom feel comfortable with their kid at a school, to know the genuineness, to know, I really think they care about Zach, and that matters. It does
Mm-hmm.
matter. They care about him beyond football, and that matters.
For sure. Was there something kind of weird or crazy or interesting that they did during the recruitment? Because you hear these stories, all different types of things that people do. Anything that kind of stands out, a story that we may not know about, something that UNC did or coaching staff did, like a weird call or a weird gesture, or interesting or great? Or during a visit.
His personality sort of interesting and great.
Yeah.
I don't know, other than just the consistency and the effort and the genuineness. I can't think of any, great story other than the time when he did lay out the facts to us, and it was so detailed. It was no denying that information and, where they could take us as a program. But they just were, you had a great time with them, going to Mac Brown's house.
What was that like?
Here
we go.
Outstanding. Yeah, outstanding. It was amazing, and having him spend time with you, talking to you about, the details of things of different players that he's invested in, and time and energy, and where they've gone and things they've done. It's just, you see through that, okay, this isn't just, it's not just a show, and it's genuine, it's real. I can see it transferring over to my son. You can begin to visualize it, and it begins to feel like home after a while. But the home is amazing. Oh, Miss Sally, she is great. You just really get so comfortable with them, and you do feel like they're family.
Any cool things about the house or something that stood out?
Oh, it's all so cool. It's beautiful. They've done, and Miss Sally is just ingenious with the decorating and the ambiance. It's just, the house is a whole vibe. And they designed it for these kids to be able to come and be a part of. And it's amazing. The pool, the game room is awesome. It's really hard to pick out one specific thing, but
is it all like Carolina Blues stuff and UNC stuff, or is it like normal people stuff, like normal living room,
normal millionaire people stuff?
Yeah.
It's normal millionaire people stuff. A lot. But you definitely know where his heart's at. But it's a lot of memorabilia from his career, from people that he's known in his office and stuff like that. They are, it's got a sophisticated, edgy, cool vibe, but it's cool enough where the kids are comfortable and feel like can be a home to them. But then it's also just, it's so nice that you're just in awe of everything in there. So it's beautiful.
We should see if there's a way that we could do a podcast from Mac Brown's house.
I was just going to say, Don and I are still waiting for the invite. So I know you're listening, Mac Brown and Sally Brown. If you're listening, this summer it would be perfect.
Yeah, we could do during the summer we could do a podcast by the pool.
Live from Mac Brown's
pool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You'll definitely be invited, Mr. Rice. Okay, so
great.
You good on the recruitment stuff, Don? I
know you're probably more interested than I am, but I would like to know how Zach's doing. So I'll just ask, what has he shared with you?
He talks to me about, oh wow, he's when I ask him how's he doing, how's it really going, and he's like, I love it. He loves it. And so I think he's really vibing with his roommates down to really getting in the flow of what it's like being a college student. I'm so glad he early enrolled. That was the best decision we made.
Who's he rooming with?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that too.
So he's rooming with George Pettaway, Travion Green, and Travis Shaw. So they 3 Virginia guys and Travis Shaw, and then not far from them are the other
4.
Yeah, they're nearby. So they go back and forth to each other's room and spend time with each other.
How much is that grocery bill with Big Trey and Travis? And
that's a lot of body.
Poor George.
That's a whole lot.
I hope George makes sure he doesn't miss. He better be early for dinner.
Yeah.
Any
they feed them good though. I've seen pictures of the plates. They feed them good, and I'm sure they're all eating very well.
You got any Travis Shaw stories or tidbits from move in or anything?
He was on COVID, so he wasn't there when we did move in, but I've certainly seen him, and I knew Travis from years ago. Zach and him actually played on travel football teams and stuff together. So he always manages to give me a hug and speak. And I don't have any great stories, but and then after Travis was on COVID, when we moved in, right after Zach got there, he was on COVID.
Oh, wow.
Leave. So he came home for a couple of days.
Well,
I think he was out for 5 days.
There's a rivalry, like a personal rivalry between Ross and Travis Shaw, because ever since Travis came about, Ross is now the second best athlete to come out of Grimsley High School.
Yeah.
So Ross doesn't like that too much,
I went to Travis. Travis went to my high school.
Okay. All right.
So what can you tell us about the strength and conditioning workouts? Has he told you about how that's going and any details about how that process has been working with Coach Hess and the whole staff there?
He said he's been working hard. It sounds like it's going well. Sounds like they're really getting acclimated. I know that they're sort of taking them slowly through the process to get them used to making sure that they've got their form correct and that they're, really being safe and cautious before they're letting them go and giving them more, I guess, freedom and allowing them to work out with the other guys. So I think, he's definitely working hard. He sees a difference. I saw him briefly over the weekend, and I can already tell that, he's looking at his body starting to change a little bit. So I can see the definition coming in.
Yeah. So they're trying to, obviously get him more muscle, but are they trying to increase his weight, upper body weight and all that good stuff? And then obviously he's gonna get through that, he's gonna get more cut and stuff.
Yeah. So from what he came in, I think he was around 300, 305 when he came in. And so they want him up to like 315, 320. So they're trying to get him to gain like a pound of muscle a week. Is what I've been told. So he's trying to put it on. So he's working hard. Of course, you got to eat the right things with that. So trying to make the right choices in what he eats to build that up the right way. And so I think he's been working hard trying to get that accomplished so that he can be, able to handle what he needs to and get stronger. He's got to get stronger. He's got to get more, I guess, sure of his technique and just got to work hard right now. And so I think that's what he's been trying to put his foot to the pedal to do.
Has he said anything about working with the offensive line already or anything they're doing with that group together to kind of build that up for the year?
I know they do these workouts where it's like player driven.
Yeah.
And so he's been talking about that a little bit. I do think that he's been trying to dive into the playbook as well and trying to make sure he's got some understanding of that. But he had, I think that really they're going to hit and get, a little bit more into things as spring practice starts next week. So.
And for those listening, we're recording this before spring practice starts. You may be listening to this after spring practice starts on Tuesday, March 1st. A little time travel there for us. Don, you got anything else about UNC or Zach?
No, I'm just appreciative for Miss Rice coming on today.
I have one more thing,
and then also just always being there whenever I had a question for stuff. So
yeah, I got two things.
Thank you all.
I got two things. Yeah. How was it like working with Don and Don bugging you? What was that like? Give us anything you want to tell us about Don. And I mean, he was probably talking to you for 2 years almost.
Well, I think Steve mostly did a lot of talking early on because Zach was always good.
That's a character right there. Still Steve Wilfong. That's a character as well.
That is a character. Zach was always good. I would text Zach or call Zach, and he would answer, or he would call me back. I know a lot of other reporters didn't have that success with Zach, but I think some of it was, I came up to his practice. I guess it was like a year ago, maybe even, about a year ago, came up to his practice, and we kind of connected there and all that sort of stuff. But I'll let you answer the question. You can tell us about Steve too, because Steve is definitely a character.
Steve's been on this podcast a couple times too.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So Steve he's been our guy for years. So I've had a few more calls with Steve than, and Steve actually called me recently about Alex with the program and her role in our recruitment, which was major as well. Alex is amazing. And so he did.
That's Alex White for those.
Alex White. Yes.
Yeah. The UNC's on-campus recruiting director.
Yeah.
Yes. So he did a piece and included that and wanted to know my input on her role. But Steve's been great, and Don has as well. I think that, like you go through this process and it's hard for Zach because he was getting tons and tons of phone calls. And so then towards the end, he's like, he sort of got the feel that a lot of people were wanting to find out where he's going. And so he certainly didn't mind talking to people. And I guess he must not have got that feel from you, Don, but it did become like everybody wanted to get the dibs in on a crystal ball. And I will always respect Steve that he was like, I'm not going to crystal ball Zach Merrick, because he knew that mattered to him. And he knew he wanted it to be his decision. And he was very respectful of that. And I'll always respect that about him. And I know that probably, when you get those inside scoops and you get that, and Zach was pretty quiet about it, and I was too. So I think it was a surprise to a lot of people when he announced, and we wanted it to be his day. We wanted it when he was ready to be his time, and we certainly appreciate that. And, we certainly feel like, that was respected, and that meant a lot to us. But no, you guys have been great. 247 has been amazing all the way through, everyone we've dealt with. And, it's been a blessing, to work with. I mean, I'll never forget the day Steve called and told us that he's got Zach ranked as the #1 offensive tackle in the nation. That's pretty mind blowing for a mom to hear.
That is crazy.
Yeah. Is ranked #1, not just in Virginia, or not just at a school, but in the nation. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still setting in. I'm still getting cold chills thinking about that. That's still setting in. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I think, Don, you've been well and done great with us too. We appreciate you guys much.
And so
we want to
go ahead.
Yeah. We just want to do whatever we can to help out. And, we're so excited about this next chapter for Zach and where this is going to go as well.
And to wrap up, can you tell us one or two things about Zach's personality, or something we need to know about him that we don't know, that fans would like to know but just don't know, that you as his mother obviously knows? There's something unique or something interesting we should know about him as a person?
When he first gets to know you, he's sort of quiet, more reserved. But then once he develops that relationship with you, he's got a pretty outgoing, dynamic personality. He's a funny kid. He enjoys life. And I mean, he loves playing hard. He loves, living up to his nickname, Big Nasty. So, he wants to be, dominant in the trenches, but also, he's really a sweet, kind-hearted kid. Loves helping others, loves working out with younger kids and helping them and being a mentor to them. And, he's not, you see him, he's so big and large and pretty massive guy. But he's really kind-hearted and a good person underneath of that. I'm pretty proud of that about him. So
awesome.
That's good.
Well, this was great, Mr. Rice. We really appreciate that, the whole interview. Don, anything else?
No, I'm just really appreciative
awesome.
of her coming on.
All right.
Thank
Thanks
you guys so much.
Don, let's go ahead and wrap this
thoughts?
up and talk about the interview as we usually do. We really appreciate Mary Rice, Miss Rice, for coming on. Did you just call her Mary Rice? I wanted to be a little more polite and say Miss Rice, but
I went back. Typically I say Miss Rice, but I went back and forth in the interview.
Yeah.
Because I do want to be respectful too. But
Yeah, and I think this is our first female scoop guest.
Wow.
Now, I've interviewed Kelsey
Breaking
Gomes.
that glass ceiling.
Yeah, that's right. I've interviewed Kelsey Gomes, who was UNC's former UNC nutrition director of nutrition. Not to brag, but that was our first. There's not many women involved in the whole recruiting process outside the moms. We need to have more moms on.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, that was a great interview. I thought she was great. She was made.
She was
made for podcasting. Her pace of talking was unbelievable. You could understand everything, and it was very sincere and thorough, and a great interview.
Yeah, well, I mentioned the weekly scoop that we ran the day before signing day.
Yeah, exactly.
Is one I'm particularly proud of, even though I didn't really do as far as writing. There was a lot of interviews that I had to conduct and transcribe and then piece it all together and all that. But I thought it came out like really well. And I got a lot of kudos for it, not to pat myself on the back, but as far as last class, particularly how North Carolina dominated the state of Virginia, it's a great read, even now that class is over with. And Mary was a huge help with that. She was very candid and gave a lot of great insight. And as you saw, I mean, she thinks it out, lays it out, very honest about her thoughts. And I think that you saw that in this interview.
For sure. So, yeah. I mean, I've never talked to her, so I had no idea what to expect. Okay. About the content of the interview. I don't know if there's anything that really, really stood out. But I thought it was cool. Her talking about Steve Wiltfong calling her and kind of the behind the scenes of working with the media. And it was interesting. They want him to gain weight, but I didn't know he entered at 305. And because we always had him listed like 285, I thought. And so he entered 305, which seems big, and they're going to try to get up to 320.
People always get crazy about the heights and weights listed on there. And I don't know if we throughout the year do a great job of keeping that updated. I think there are different times where they get updated, and sometimes you'll see a height and weight that's from a kid's like sophomore season. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. So
it's like Travis Shaw's was like 315 forever, and we were like, he's not 315, he's way over 330. So
yeah.
What else about you?
Yeah, the other thing for me was the crystal ball thing. So I get a lot of questions on why I've never done a crystal ball, and that's an example why is because obviously there's a lot of on the record conversations I have with people. And I think I've only done one on the record conversation with Mary. All of it's off the record. And it's difficult to have trust with someone if they feel like that you're going to run and make a crystal ball for everybody to see.
Yeah.
Obviously I have a job. I'm supposed to put things out there. So I'm very clear about, okay, hey, I'm going to run with this. I'm not going to run with this. But as a whole, this is maybe not the greatest example, but it is an example. Somebody who really, they did not want crystal balls whatsoever. They would have cut you off if they felt like you were going to put a crystal ball in. And so that's an example of why.
Yeah. And inside Carolina, no one makes crystal ball picks. But obviously with you, there's a certain reason why, and you got to be touchy with how you do that. But your crystal balls essentially are the mock classes. I was trying to get more out of her about the house, but she gave us some good stuff about the house.
We really should reach out to Jeremy and see if there's anything we could do.
Yeah, it might be a summer thing. And then it seems like every time we talk to these parents, it's always the same thing about how they get recruited and how the coaching staff recruits them. It's honesty, it's transparency, it's family, it's being genuine and being very attentive and very active in their recruiting process. And that seems to be the main answer for all these big time recruits we've had on, their parents we've had on. So that comes across. It's definitely registering with these big time recruits, is that kind of that truthfulness, the honesty, all that good stuff, which I think you would hear from a lot of people from a lot of different schools too.
Yeah. So I think it ultimately the college decision comes down to where the recruit feels most comfortable, where the parents feel most comfortable.
And that comes from building that relationship and
comes from building the relationship. It also comes from, I think that UNC and Virginia had a head up on the competition because they were only able to visit the three other schools once, but were able to visit North Carolina, Virginia a bunch of times. Now I know that they will say that wasn't intentionally, and that they didn't want that to happen. But I think it's just kind of human nature and maybe like a subconscious thing. You're subconsciously going to feel more comfortable where you've been multiple times as opposed to a place you've only been one time.
Yeah. And being close helps as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So just switch the view on our Zoom thing. So I wonder how that records. So I think everything we said checks out, and I got nothing really else to add. We're recording this obviously in February. So as opposed to some interviews where they're still going through the recruiting process or they've been committed but not signed, like we can't have Zach on anymore. We could, but not this kind of way. But so it's good to get Mary Rice on and talk to her and get a little insight into that experience of early enrolling and what it's like at UNC so far, and of course the glimpse to the recruitment. Anything else, Don?
No, I'm ready to head to commercial break or whatever it is.
Yeah, we'll cut to a commercial break now. We'll come back to close out the Scoop podcast. We appreciate you listening. Of course, this is brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back from the whole Zach Rice, Mary Rice conversation. We already talked about the interview, Don. So let's get right into spring practice. UNC held its first spring practice on Tuesday, March 1st. I was there. Greg was there. We had like 6 people there for Inside Carolina. And then you have some questions and just kind of get into a little conversation here before we close out this podcast.
Yeah, I think the most appropriate one immediately is, since we just talked to or just had the interview with Mary Rice, is you mentioned a little bit of getting a chance to see Zach Rice, and you saw him with the ones at some point. What were your thoughts? I mean, obviously he's just a freshman and should be actually in high school right now, but what were your thoughts on what you saw from him?
Yeah, and Mac Brown talked about him as well. So he got some time in at kind of rotating back and forth at first team right tackle, which is surprising. You just don't see freshmen working in with the first team that often, especially on the first day of spring practice. But this is not your regular freshman. This is a 5-star top offensive tackle in the country. And so there's a reason why, they wanted him so bad. And there's a reason why he's getting time at the right tackle spot. Let me see. I'm going to pull up a quote here from Mac Brown. Mac Brown said, when asked about Zach Rice getting reps at right tackle, he said, "It's very rare. He's probably 6'5" plus, 316 pounds. He's quick and really aggressive. I think the biggest thing about him is his aggressive nature. He loves to come off the ball and compete. The hardest thing for him, hardest thing for the 3 freshman linemen will be the pass protection, because they're protecting against much better pass rushers in college than they did in high school." He talked about how Rice, he was talking with Rice after practice. He's like, "Man, that was quick. That was so much quicker than high school. There's so much, you move through practice so fast. Felt like weren't out there at all. There was no staying around." But he said he had a blast and was really doing well. So look, one day into practice, we got Zach Rice running with the first team, splitting time at first team. And I imagine we'll get a lot of different linemen working in, because they lost 3 starters. There's a lot of openings. Jordan Tucker, Marcus McKeithen, Joshua Azudu. So there's a lot of new names, new faces, and people vying for different positions. But that's do you think he could start? I mean, like, what do you think, Don?
I mean, I just always kind of lean on the numbers, and they don't favor offensive linemen, playing at all really as true freshmen. As you mentioned, this is not your average offensive lineman, but and then, you have guys who have experience already. So, my guess is that ultimately he ends up playing a good bit, but and maybe he starts a game here or there. But I just think that you probably want I know there's injuries throughout the roster.
Yeah.
How bad has the offensive line been hit with injuries for the spring?
It's not been as bad as some other positions.
Yeah, I'm wondering. So let me see.
Actually, I want to pull the depth chart here too. So we're kind of.
You got Austin Richards and William Barnes are the 2 tackles right now.
Barnes, so he split time with Barnes. Rice split time with Barnes at right tackle.
So I mean, so I would think that his best bet is to supplant Barnes. And I mean Barnes says what is he? Is he a junior?
I think this is his 4th year.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's one of the problems is that Zach has only played high school ball. Barnes has 3 years of practicing college. I mean, that's big, and that gives him advantage. And it wasn't like Barnes was a slouch. I mean, he was a highly coveted offensive lineman also. I think we forget. I mean, he was a big land for North Carolina when he signed, or when he committed on signing day.
Yeah, I think it's
class.
I think it's important to know that Barnes probably got the majority of snaps at right tackle. And Diego Pounds was kind of splitting time at the twos as well with Zach Rice. So you have Diego Pounds, Zach Rice at the two. But Zach Rice did get some first team reps, but it's very fluid now. I remember this is the first day of practice. Okay. Anything else you got?
Yeah. I mean, I got tons of questions for you, but all right. So I kind of mentioned the Gene Chizik coaching the jacks position, which I have so many just random thoughts on this. One, because when Chizik was here the first time, and you were here, right? You were covering the beat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He didn't have this position in his defense. He went with the power end and speed end were the two he used. And just looking at, and I haven't seen it. One, I'm curious about why he chose to this is the position he's coaching, because he didn't do a whole lot of individual coaching last time around. And then two, I guess what were your observations? Let me just start there, and then I'll have a follow. I don't want to throw a lot of questions at you at once. On
the jack position?
Yeah, well, just on the jack position, what you saw from Chizik coaching those guys and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really see. I don't know. I don't have too many comments on the actual. I'll say this. Noah Taylor was really impressive, and he's a jack. It's weird to call it that, because when you write it, you go like Jack Noah Taylor, and you're like, is his name Jack Noah Taylor? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I had that issue yesterday. Noah Taylor was really impressive, and I saw that and heard that from someone else. And then when we got back to the office, Greg and Gregory, that's what they noticed as well. So Noah Taylor, 6'5", he's a graduate transfer from Virginia. He's long, he's athletic. He was one of the most impressive players out there from a pass rushing standpoint. Looked the part as well. So it's an edge kind of rusher, can also drop into coverage type thing. Maybe kind of that outside linebacker, defensive end hybrid. Is that how you see it as well?
That's how it was kind of described to me. Now, this kind of leads to my next question, which was really curious. A lot of the stuff reading, I don't know if you necessarily put it, but I know Gregory Hall had some, but it was mentioned somewhere else in the scoop too, was that this position was coming off the edge on the right side towards the right tackle as being the right tackle, which to me, you want your edge rusher to come off the left side, because that's the blind side of the quarterback. So was this guy that position, that jack position, which shouldn't they name it Ross? I mean, that seems more appropriate, right? But anyway, the jack position, was it always coming, attacking that right side of the offensive line?
Well, on some one-on-ones, I saw him coming from the left side. I didn't see. I would defer to them if that's what they said. That's what they said on some team stuff. But on one-on-ones, they were rushing from, at times the middle through a guard, and then also on the left. The other jacks listed. There's 5 listed on the roster. Bo Atkinson, who I think is a little big for that position. I think he may be better suited to put on some weight and be a kind of a Des Evans type power end. Yeah. But he looks impressive. He looks the part at 6'6", 240. Chris Collins, they're excited about him. It's just kind of his time to make an impact. He's a senior now, 6'4.5", 243. And then you have Gabe Stevens, a redshirt freshman, 6'3", 3 3/4, 205. Definitely needs to put on some weight. So those are your listed jacks. That's a walk on, Kobe Doreen. So all right, let's move on from the jack stuff. I want to learn more about it. I mean, that's
that's what I'm so curious, because like I said, this is not something Chizik had before.
Yeah, so I think it's a Charlton Warren thing.
Gotcha.
I think that's what I remember them saying during their introductory press conference. That press conference was not focused on like the technicalities and the fundamentals and all the positions. That was more on like the general, their return and recruiting and things like that. So I think when we get them, hopefully during spring practice, we'll be able to ask more civic questions. All
right. My next topic for you, the quarterbacks, because that's obviously, I'm actually surprised this hasn't gotten a lot more, I don't know. People don't talk about it. I mean, they talk about it, but I thought it would be big. I mean, it's a quarterback, and you have a competition.
And I think it's just going to be Drake May. I think that's how fans see it too. I don't know. It just makes the most sense.
I mean,
He looked good.
Who looked? I mean, if you just who looked best yesterday or Tuesday?
I thought Drake May looked best. He looks apart. He's 6'4", 6'5". He looks athletic. He moves really well. His arm looked great from my untrained eye. I just think it makes a lot of sense for him to kind of just take it over from Sam, Charlotte guy, the legacy, and he was a big time recruit, and he looked great to me. I don't know, it's hard to see first day in spring practice with no pads, without the defensive line coming down on them, but I think it's gonna be Drake, man.
Okay.
So you might have
I mean, it makes sense. I think that's kind of the buzz.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can go on forever with questions because I'm definitely curious, and I'm sure I mean, how much did you guys actually end up seeing?
We were there for 2 hours.
Oh,
but,
wow.
So it's
the
tons of
whole
drill.
practice
It's drill work.
Yeah.
It's drill work. There's a lot of one-on-ones, which are fun.
Mhm.
Offensive line, defensive line one-on-ones, and then wide receiver, cornerback one-on-ones. But you're trying to see everything you can. It's tough. They
Yeah.
did some special team stuff. They did some kind of skeleton offense, skeleton defense. Yeah, it's a lot.
It is going fast, like Zach mentioned. Because I mean, high school practices are so easy because it's just there's so much downtime and there's but yeah, college they're running from drill to drill to drill. So, but yeah, I mean that basically wraps it up for me. That's all I guess the main questions I have.
There you go.
I hate that you're only able to see one practice, but
I think that's it. Let me pull it up here. Yeah.
Well, that's what it was last year, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, COVID. And so we did a kind of takeaways from Mac Brown's press conference. Check that out. And then we did, of course, the scoop that Greg put together with the help of Greg Green Eye. That's actually really good for subscribers. It has a full depth chart and has tons of observations. It was a pretty massive scoop that we put together. Okay. Anything else on spring practice?
No, not at the moment. I think I hit on my main questions for you.
Okay, good stuff. Well, let's get out of here. How about that?
It sounds good. We need to come out with a new top 5 at some point.
Okay. Well, we'll think of one. We'll think of one to give out next week. Next time.
If you have an idea for a top 5, send it to us somehow.
There you go. There you go. If you have an idea for a top 5, send it to Don on Twitter, DM, or on Inside Carolina DM, or email.
Or you could put it in the thread for this, right?
Sure. Yeah, new top 5. All right, good stuff. Hopefully you enjoyed the Mary Rice interview. I thought that was the highlight of the show. We'll be with you again in a week or two with more recruiting stuff coming off a junior day. There's just not much news with the 2023 recruiting class. Like there's no commitments. There's no pending recruitments that are going to commit. So there's not much news. Is that kind of how you feel too, Don?
Yeah, I mean, it's just there was a discussion on this topic on the message board, but I think the combination of the season wasn't so great, so the momentum is a little bit tough. Yeah, the coaching changes, which you have to reestablish. There's new guy. I mean, there was a bunch of guys offered towards the end of January, early February, that we don't know where UNC stands. They don't know how they feel about UNC. Some of that's going to be established during visits. And there's one other topic that I can't remember what it was. That was my third reason for why things have kind of slowed so much. But it's just things will get rolling. I think we'll have a better understanding what's going on in this class, after probably once we get into April, because there's going to be a bunch of visits this month that I think will help kind of set a path. Yeah.
And then, sometimes you get commitments around the spring game and into the summer, and always remember June kind of being the big kind of May, June being the big commitment time. And Mac likes to get his commitments in, but so we'll see. All right, guys, thanks for listening to Scoop, brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com. Guys, remember to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube page to watch all these podcasts.
I remember the other thing.
Okay.
The lack of talent in North Carolina and Virginia. So North Carolina's so it takes a little more time to recruit the out-of-state guys, and that's why things have slowed down a little bit. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just thought about it. Go ahead.
There you go. The scoop never stops. All right, guys, rate, review, and subscribe. Please, the Inside Carolina podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube page. And make sure you check out Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com. All right, guys, thanks for listening. We will talk to you next time.